Also, Dr. Lester Stewart has our national anthem.
Let me get this chicken down.
Yeah.
All right. We don't have a piano today. We're gonna sing Acapulco, okay? Here we go.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous time o'er the ramparts we walked were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red flare, Dothan's bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Seth Brooks has our invocation.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for allowing us together here today, brotherhood and fellowship. We ask that you look out over us and all those in the world who so desperately need you. We ask that this food that we have received, that you use it for the nourishment to our bodies and our bodies to your service. And please help us remember that every day is a gift, and that every day all of our actions should be to glorify you. In Christ's holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Family of Rotary, Terry Duffy.
President Greg, long birthday, short on the anniversary. Happy birthday going out to Chris Judah, October 25th, Todd Salas, October 27th, a pair on October the 28th, Chuck Jackson and Lynn Miley. Jim Matheny, October 29th, and Bo Thaggart, October the 30th. Anniversary celebrating Bill Castle and Francis on October 26th, and Jim Kelly and Jamie on October the 28th. Hope you all have a fantastic week. Thank you.
All right.
Hello.
Ambassador, Catherine Maylay.
You're gonna have to come back around today.
Okay, we'll come back around. Art Morris has an announcement.
Just wanted to make a quick announcement. I don't know if this is on, but I wanted to make a quick announcement regarding the Senior Citizens Luncheon this year. Sorry about that. It's going to be Tuesday, December the 13th, and we are looking for sponsors for it. Sponsorships are $250. If your business is interested in providing a sponsorship for it, it'll help offset the costs. We're renting the Alpha building at the National Peanut Festival, and we're expecting, several hundred seniors to show up. So we need to pay for food and for the building. I'd like to be able to zero those costs out if we can, if it's possible. So again, we're looking for sponsorships, $250. Get your name up on a banner and you get mentioned during the meeting. So please get in touch with me if you're interested in doing something like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. This is loud.
We are good now. We have some late people, so we're taking it and stuff.
1,144 points. Last four digits, 7393. 739.
Let's go. Let's go. How many hearts are left? A lot.
Tim Spades. The ace lives on. Dale Goodwin has,
He's not here yet, so go ahead with the part, we'll come back. Okay? You don't mind.
well, this is the last thing. Yeah, who wants to sing a song? Cal, how's your singing voice? I'm not Cal, Jim.
What do you need?
We're just being fun. Charles Buntin has our program today on World Polio Day. And Charles, somewhere in here at the end, we have a presentation for Cassandra Riley.
Good afternoon, how's everybody? Good. Good. I'm sure you got the email and saw it's World Polio Day. Couldn't wait to get here. You're all about World Polio Day, but actually it is very, very important. It's important to rejoice in the successes we've had, see where we need to go, and see what the challenges are. But today is October 24th is World Polio Day, and if you didn't know, it is the birthday of Jonas Salk, and that's why it's World Polio Day. He led the first team to develop a vaccine against polio and began testing the vaccine in 1953, so that's why it is today. If you were here last year, today's going to be a little bit of the same. I've got a video that I'm going to show that I showed last year, but it really hits on all facets of where our country came with polio, how it started, how it the vaccine got moved across, and just the history of where we started and where we are today. It's a little animated, it's a little goofy, but it gets the point across. Got some videos today, got first on-hand speaker, Reichert's gonna talk to us, and then got a little surprise, which will be kind of nice. But so if y'all will hang with me, let's watch this video. The first one's about 7 minutes long, but it's very, very informative. So it'll tell you everything you need to know. Thank you.
Poliomyelitis, more commonly known as polio, is caused by, you guessed it, the polio virus. Polio can spread from person to person and is known to infect the spinal cord, which causes paralysis. The first major documented polio outbreak in the United States happened in June of 1894, when 18 people died, along with 132 cases of permanent paralysis. Back then, we didn't know that polio could be spread from person to person. It wasn't until 1905 that Swedish scientist Ivar Wickman published two important findings about polio. First, that the disease is infectious, and second, that some people who have polio don't get a severe form of the disease. Finally, in 1908, two scientists in Vienna, Karl Landsteiner and Erwin Popper, conducted experiments to find that an infectious particle smaller than a bacterium caused the disease. They concluded that polio was caused by a virus, though we didn't have the technology to actually see the virus until the 1950s, when the electron microscope became available. Even though scientists knew the disease was caused by a virus and spread between people, we didn't yet have an effective treatment or prevention method. In 1916, a polio epidemic cropped up in New York City that killed over 2,000 people within the city, about 6,000 people across the country, and left thousands more paralyzed. A large problem is that not only can the polio virus cause paralysis of an arm or leg, but it can also paralyze the diaphragm and muscles required for breathing. That's why by 1929, the development of an artificial respirator for patients suffering from paralytic polio was welcome news. The artificial respirator device later became known as an iron lung, which is basically a sealed tube-like structure that a patient's entire body is enclosed in, except for their head. The machine uses pressure to force air into the lungs and then force air back out, effectively breathing for the patient. Jumping forward a bit, we now know that poliomyelitis is caused by 3 serotypes of poliovirus: poliovirus 1 or PV1, poliovirus 2 or PV2, and poliovirus 3 or PV3. These viruses are non-enveloped, single-stranded RNA viruses that are classified as members of the genus Enterovirus and the family Picornaviridae. The 3 serotypes are just different enough that immunity to one serotype typically doesn't provide immunity for other serotypes. As far as transmission goes, it turns out that polioviruses can only infect humans. Polioviruses are quite stable under natural conditions and have been found in places like swimming pools. They typically enter the body through the mouth via the fecal-oral route, infect the throat and intestinal tract, and then move on to invade the bloodstream. Today, we know that over 70% of people infected with poliovirus will not have a single visible symptom. About a quarter of people might have flu-like symptoms that last only a few days, but for the most part, the immune system can conquer the infection and achieve complete recovery. It's therefore interesting to think about the large outbreaks of the past, considering that only around 1% of cases involve weakness or paralysis. In those rare cases, the virus binds specific receptors on motor neurons, which are the neurons within the spinal cord and brain that we learned about in the Anatomy and Physiology series. It then replicates and destroys the infected cells. This means that if a single case of poliomyelitis is observed, it's likely that the disease is already rampant in that population. To be clear, the term poliomyelitis is reserved for cases specifically involving paralysis. For those people that do show serious symptoms, they might experience paresthesia, which is a feeling of pins and needles in the legs, meningitis, which is an inflammation of the membranes surrounding the brain and spinal cord, or paralysis, which is the most severe symptom. In some cases, muscle pain, weakness, or paralysis can come back anywhere from 15 to 40 years after infection, which is called post-polio syndrome. Zooming out a bit, polioviruses are endemic in areas with crowding and poor sanitation. In these nations, newborns typically have antibody protection from their mothers for the first few months of life and are likely to be exposed to the poliovirus at a young age. They might develop a mild illness, but because of their mother's antibodies, the virus is blocked from spreading to the motor neurons, and they develop lifelong immunity. In countries with good sanitation, however, poliovirus immunity is less common, so a poliovirus outbreak can have devastating effects. Without widespread immunity, it is more likely that there are more cases of paralysis. That is precisely what happened in the US in the 1950s, when cases of respiratory paralysis spiked. For poliovirus infections, the main types of treatment involve supportive care, which includes rest, fluids, pain medications, and in some cases, an iron lung. There are 2 types of vaccines that can prevent polio. The first is an inactivated poliovirus vaccine, or IPV, which is given as an injection in the leg or arm. And the second is an oral poliovirus vaccine, or OPV. Thanks to a successful vaccination program, the United States has been polio-free since 1979, meaning that year-round transmission no longer occurs. The virus has been brought into the country by travelers since, but the last case of such an event was in 1993. Globally, poliovirus 2 was eradicated in 1999. And there hasn't been a case of poliovirus 3 since 2012. According to the World Health Organization, poliovirus 1 affects only 2 countries as of 2020, Pakistan and Afghanistan. So with any luck, this will soon be eradicated as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to my channel for more tutorials. Support me on Patreon so I can keep making content. And as always, feel free to email.
Professor Dave. All right. Good job for us. Of course, that video is about a year old, and as you all know, there were some cases in New York City a couple months ago that we're going to touch on, but for right now, our own Rick Riker, his mom had polio, and so I've asked him to kind of come up and kind of give a firsthand testimony. And so if y'all will come on up to the floor, Rick. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for doing this. He turned that down.
Well, I'm not near as prepared as I ought. Well, I'm not near as prepared as I was last year. Charles, all the time, he texted me this weekend and I was out deep sea fishing. So I had great notes last year, had 3 or 4 pages, but you're probably glad you not see me walk up here with 3 or 4 pages. You think I'll be here all day. I hate to say, I say that, but my mom had polio, and I knew that growing up, but I'll be honest with you, I really never thought about it until I got a Rotary, and it was probably until a few years ago when we were talking about it, and then COVID going around. I got to talk with my mom, lives down in the Villages, and she's got Alzheimer's now, but she's told me about it kind of off and on, but you never really hear about it much. So I never really asked a lot of hard questions, but I did a few years ago, especially when I knew I was had asked me to speak last year. My mom grew up in Troy, Alabama, and polio had kind of creeped up in Alabama a little bit, not real prevalent, but she was in elementary school at Charles Henderson, and my grandfather was a pharmacist, so you think if there was any vaccinations, my mom would have had them. Obviously don't know, and she couldn't remember either, but she went to school one day. I think she was in the 4th or 5th grade, which would have been probably right in the early 50s. And teacher calls my grandfather and my grandmother and said, you know, my mom's kind of like wobbly and kind of tripping at school. So they go grab her, take her to the Troy Medical Center, and they get her. Of course, they can't really figure out what's going on, so they have to take her to Montgomery. Well, there was a specific hospital in Montgomery that if you had polio, which they didn't know she had at the time, they were supposed to take her to that specific hospital. Well, my grandfather knew some doctors at the other hospital, and he kind of knew the governor a little bit at the time, and his doctor worked at that hospital. So he went to that hospital, not thinking she had polio. And then, of course, they tested her. She had polio. Well, then the thing was, well, do we want to take her to the other hospital? Of course, she's got polio, you know, she's going to give it to who else? And so they kind of panic mode. Well, they decided to kind of hide it away, not tell anybody, and they kept her at that hospital. Actually, I guess they were worried about it enough, and the governor's doctor, who was over the medical part of the state of Alabama, they put up a janitorial sign on her room so people wouldn't think they'd go walking in there and know it was specifically her room and would be, you know, visiting that room. So, but she actually, the iron lung, my mom actually had the iron lung. Besides really no upper body, but lower body, she did tell me having to get out of the bed. She thought she was fine, you know, and she didn't realize it either. Her speech, she had a hard time with speech, and luckily my grandmother could kind of read her lips and figure out what's going on. But she ended up spending, I want to say, almost 2 months in the hospital. She ended up being a cheerleader in high school, in the band. So she didn't have any long-term effects, and she's 79 years old. She has no long-term effects, but she's a teacher for 32 years. So, and I hate to say this, I meant to call her last night. I didn't know she would have. I guess you have antibodies after you have it, but I've never asked if she ever found out if she was ever vaccinated. But, personally, thank the Lord, she's great. She's not having any. I don't know how late they can come back, but she plays golf and does everything else. But there for a while, my grandparents were pretty worried at the time. But that's my story.
Excellent.
Stick it to it.
Great, thank you. And what a blessing that it wasn't any worse. If you followed the news a few months ago, New York found a case of polio, and so I found a little video. It's about 2 minutes long. It kind of shows what they found and kind of a little bit how they dealt with it.
Tonight, New York City's health department is urging pediatricians to immediately identify and schedule appointments for children who are behind on their polio shots. The virus has now been detected in sewage samples in the nation's largest city. Here's CBS's Elaine.
Public health officials are warning the presence of polio virus in New York City's wastewater means the disease is likely circulating locally. They're urging those unvaccinated to get immunized immediately. In New York City, 86% of kids 5 and under have received 3 doses of the vaccine, but in some areas that number drops below 60%. This comes just 3 weeks after a man was paralyzed with polio in Rockland County, New York, the U.S.'s first case in 9 years. Officials fear hundreds could be infected. The likely culprit, vaccine hesitance. The polio vaccination rate in Rockland County is just 60% compared to the nearly 79% statewide. Polio used to disable thousands, mostly children, each year, but was largely eradicated in America through mass vaccination programs starting in the 1950s. Doctors say people need to be proactive about making sure it doesn't spread.
If we can go back to having very, very high standards with regard to making sure that people are vaccinated, making sure that the immunization rates are better, that's our best method of protection.
Officials in Rockland County have opened vaccination clinics to make getting a vaccine easier. But Nancy, it's not just a problem here. London has also detected polio in wastewater, and officials are encouraging about 1 million children there to get a booster.
A vaccine that has been safe and effective for decades. Elaine Kihana, thank you.
Fun Family Morning Star.
So, a little scary there in New York for it to pop up back in the United States. Got a little bit of a treat. So when I was trying to figure out how to make this a little interesting today, I was kind of thinking, well, with it popping up in New York, how can we get kind of a firsthand accounting of what happened? And so I started calling our Rotarians in New York, and actually I have somebody I'm about to call. So I'm gonna hold this phone up, speakerphone up to the mic, but she's on standby. Just want to tell you a little bit about her. That's Mary Shackleton right there. She is in the New York Rotary in Manhattan, and she is all Rotarian. She was a district governor last year. Currently, she is vice governor and district Rotary Foundation committee chair for like the next 3 years. Very well educated. She's a research specialist with the international law firm of Kirkland and Ellis. She got her BA from in communications from Purdue. She went on and got her JD in law school. She's a 4th-generation Rotarian. And so I reached out to, I'll be honest with you, I reached out to about 8 or 9 New York Rotarians. One emailed me back last night, said, no, I can't make it. Everybody else blew me off. And then she got right back to me. And she was all gung-ho about it. And so I've been telling her about what time it is. So she's sitting at her desk. So I'm gonna try to do this. Y'all just be quiet and see how this goes. Don't ask any questions, because I think I said I might just mess us up. But if we have time, maybe I will. Very, very nice lady. She's a boiler maker. And so she's a longtime fan of Purdue, likes most sports. And so we'll see what happens. All right, here we go.
Hello.
Mary.
Hi. Hello, Alabama.
Hey. Can you hear them flying for you?
I sure can.
Okay.
It's great to be with you.
Yes, well, it's great for you to be with us. Hopefully you can understand my Southern accent. You don't sound like you have a real strong Yankee accent?
No, I grew up in the Midwest, so I'm a proud Midwest farmer's daughter, although I've lived in the New York City area for 20 years now.
Gotcha. Were you bummed out the Yankees got eliminated last night?
I'm actually a Chicago Cubs fan. Watching Justice, his quest for the home run title in the American League was a lot of fun, and it was a nice relief from all the things that we've been through with the pandemic and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Well, your Boilermakers are doing pretty good, right?
Absolutely. They fell a little short at Wisconsin, and of course, I'm sure many of you are Crimson Tide fans, so enjoy watching them play.
Yeah, you got about a half and half crowd in here. The other half are orange and blue Auburn. Have you ever heard of that school?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, Mary, thank you so much for joining us. I just showed a video from CBS that was, of course, back in August that kind of said, kind of touched on a little bit of what went on in New York City. Can you kind of walk us through a little bit, like, how was it detected? How many people were affected, and where y'all stand with it right now?
Okay, well, this case, in basically the lower Hudson River Valley, about 30 miles north of New York City, was reported back in August, and it's connected to cases in London and Jerusalem. It is the vaccine-derived version of polio. As some of you may know or have heard, the oral vaccine, those 2 drops, actually contains attenuated or partially live virus, and it can, in the water supply, mutate to form a form of polio. And that's what this case was. There was at least one paralytic case, and as the expert said, when there's one paralytic case, there's probably hundreds of other, or at least 100 other asymptomatic or less symptomatic cases. So it's definitely here in the water supply. It's now reported throughout the greater New York City area, as far out as Long Island.
Have you seen the infant vaccine rate kind of go up since this happened?
Well, as you might have heard, our governor, Catherine Hochul, declared a state of emergency to try to help get vaccines out there. And as of a couple of days ago, CNBC was reporting that they're actually considering using live or oral polio virus again here in the United States. The CDC is strongly looking at that so that they can have a more robust vaccination program. As some of you may know, here in the United States and many other parts of the developed world, the polio vaccine is now an injectable, but they need to get the vaccine rapidly dispersed. So they're thinking, using the oral vaccine, which non-healthcare professionals can administer, and it's also much easier to administer. But that's gonna help. The outbreak has not ended. They are still detecting environmental samples here in the general vicinity.
Yikes. Well, Mary, so what's the local leadership? What are they doing? I mean,
like I said, the governor has declared a state of emergency in New York that provides funding and additional resources to get vaccines out there. They're encouraging anyone who is not sure of their vaccination status. In fact, one of our past district governors who grew up in Sweden had not been vaccinated for polio, and he just went to get his polio vaccine. So it's a matter of real concern. Of course, polio is a disease primarily of those under the age of 5, but anybody can get polio. Of course, famously, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, acquired polio when he was in his middle age. So anyone can get polio, and I think things are under control, but this demonstrates, not that we really should have needed a NIMBY, not in my backyard example. It shows how zero really matters. Some of you might have seen that video that Rotary International released maybe 5 years ago. And we're all 1 or 2 plane rides away from polio outbreak in our community. And that's why it's so important. This has been going on since really 1979, I know, and Rotary has been fully engaged in this effort since like 1986. And so this has been a real marathon, like an ultra marathon, not a sprint. But we can't stop now. I know many of you are probably like, why are we still talking about polio? And I hope there's some of you in the club who don't even remember when polio was a real concern here in the United States. But it could be again, and I guess this is a wake-up call for all of us who thought we had this licked. And I think we're still counting down to 0, and maybe this happening will encourage all of us to support Rotary International's main philanthropic goal of ending polio. And hopefully this is a World Polio Day where we all recommitted and redoubled our efforts toward polio eradication.
Absolutely, absolutely. With any questions for Mary while we got her from NYC? Mary, have you did you enjoy? I'm sure you've been through Dothan before. Did you enjoy your stay when you came through?
You know what? I have never been to the state of Alabama, and I hope to visit your great state very soon. I'm trying to finish up the states that I haven't been to, and Alabama is toward the top of my list. So I look forward to coming, and I will try to get to either an Auburn or an Alabama game if I can get a ticket.
There you go. Well, we can probably hook you up there. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Invite her to this club meeting when you come.
Yeah. You'll have to come to our club meetings. We're Monday at 1 to 2 Eastern time. So, yeah. Any other questions for Mary?
No.
Well, Mary, I just cannot thank you enough. You were so gracious to take your time, and I hope Mr. Kirkland and Mr. Ellis are okay with you taking time away from your research.
Absolutely, and they are. This firm is really, really supportive of my efforts in Rotary. I wish all you employers or in your businesses have the same experience. And yes, you can be gainfully employed and a leader in Rotary. So I would encourage all of you to look at serving your club or your district or your zone as a leader. It's one of the great privileges to do that.
Fantastic. So just set us up real quick. What is your view out your window? Do you look out the Hudson River or Manhattan, or are you in New Jersey? Where are you?
Well, some of you might recognize the building where I work. If you watch the Law and Order franchise, at least in the early days, they showed the New York City skyline from Queens. The City Corp Center, which is the building with that really large angle. It has a slant at the top. I can look out actually on all 4 sides. So depending on what part of the building, I unfortunately don't have a window office, but I can look out the window across the hall from me and see all of the northern part of Manhattan. And if you go to our lovely conference center, you have a 360-degree view of the city. It's
Wow.
phenomenal.
That's nice. That's really nice. When does your club meet?
So I'm a member of the Metro New York City Club, and it has actually an interesting history. We were one of the pilot clubs, so we had meeting and membership flexibility before it rolled out to the rest of Rotary. So we meet the second and fourth Wednesdays. We have a formal meeting, and then we have a bunch of social and service activities throughout the month. So if you're ever in New York City, we're starting to meet back in person, and we also have our Zoom meeting links also up on our webpage. So I will send you the link. So feel free to join us anytime.
Okay, well, Mary, I can't thank you enough. I'll send you you'll probably get a package from me of some peanuts. We're the peanut capital of the world. Yeah, and maybe some fair tickets and some other things. So, yeah. Well, Mary, thanks again. We really, really appreciate you, and all the best, and take care. Thanks, man. Well, that was fun. Something a little bit different. And so now we've got a video from our president of Rotary International, just kind of updating us where we are as a club.
Is always a wonderful opportunity to take note of our incredible progress and to talk about the final steps necessary to end polio now. But this year, it's special. Polio has returned to the headlines, and it's again striking fear. We know that the whole world is watching, and while we don't want anyone to live in fear, we should be grateful for this focus. We know that if the polio virus exists anywhere, it threatens children everywhere. This fact inspires your continuing hard work, dedication, donations, and advocacy. We're on the brink of eradicating polio because of you, and I want to thank you for it. And I want to add a special thank you to the people on the front lines, everyone working to vaccinate children in Pakistan. I had the opportunity to meet some of them during my recent visit, and I want to share with you a little bit of that experience.
I just want to take an opportunity while I'm here with all of you to say thank you. What you're doing is incredibly powerful, meaningful, life-saving work. We're so close to polio being gone, and it's because of you that we're going to cross the finish line, and we're going to make sure every child is protected. So thank you. From one woman to another, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
I'm so inspired by these amazing healthcare workers, and I hope they inspire you too. So please, donate your money, donate your time, and keep reminding everyone you know that the fight is theirs too. Together, let's give this amazing gift to the children of the world.
Excellent. So just a few parting words about, kind of where we've been and what Rotary's done. So Rotary's been working to eradicate polio for over 35 years. Our goal of ridding the world of this disease is closer than ever. Rotary members have contributed more than 2.1 billion and count dollars and countless volunteer hours to protect nearly 3 billion children in 122 countries from this paralyzing disease. Rotary's advocacy efforts have played a role in decisions by governments to contribute more than 10 billion to the effort. And I think, like Mary said, we can't stop. 99.9 is not good enough. It needs to be 100%, and it's a wake-up call for it to show up in New York. And but this is really eye-opening and will make us continue to fight the if all eradication efforts stopped today, within 10 years, polio would paralyze as many as 200,000 children each year. So that's kind of a wake up call. But anyway, appreciate your attention. Happy World Polio Day. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Things like polio are a challenge that bring us together. And there can be good things that come out of us coming together. In 1933, Franklin Delano Roosevelt became president of the United States. He had polio. Part of his treatment was to go to Warm Springs, Georgia, and to get in the springs there. He was allowed to get out and drive in the countryside. As a president, he took that liberty without Secret Service. He'd get an automobile and just drive out into the rural areas. He had a flat tire one day, pulled into a service station, had to pull into a service station. And he was amazed that the people at the service station came out with a hand pump and pumped his tire up. He said, "What are y'all doing with a hand pump? Changing my tire and pumping it up." They said, "We don't have any electricity." He got thinking about it and said, "Well, that ain't right." Came to find out 90% of rural America didn't have electricity in 1933 and 1934. Happened to be popular enough and powerful enough that by 1935, he pushed the Rural Electrification Act through Congress, which started the first electric co-ops. So now 70% of the land mass in this country has electricity because a man with polio took driving the country in an area in Georgia where he was getting treated. So whatever our adversities are, as we come together and communicate, we make something great happen.
Well said, Les. Well said. Dale Goodwin has an announcement.
Okay. I would like to thank Cassandra Rowley. I'm gonna let Blake tell you a little bit about her, and then I'll come back with my part. Blake and Cassandra, come up.
Well, first off, I didn't know Cassandra until about 3 weeks ago, and didn't know her last name until about 2 seconds ago. But there's some people, when you meet them in this world, that you can tell they make a difference. And especially in today's world, when I hire a lot of people and a lot of people leave and have to hire a lot more people. When I met her within 5 minutes, I thought, whoever owns the Dunkin' Donuts franchise in this area has got a winner. You can tell immediately that she's an awesome person. You can tell that her employees respond to her. I noticed 1 or 2 employee problems while I was there, and she handled it great. But there's just not many people, when you meet them these days, that you can tell that she is a very genuine person. So within that span of time, she followed me around to every Dunkin' Donuts and picked up 500 or so boxes of donuts with us. She didn't have to do that with Catherine and myself. And I just want to say thank you to her, and want to say that I'm blessed to have met her, and it'll change my life forever. So thank you.
Cassandra is the manager over all the Dunkin' Donuts here in Dothan and the store in Enterprise. And the owner of the company, Purple Square Management, provided over 750 boxes of donuts to us in this area. Free of charge, the time, the money, the transportation, everything. And it's Mr. Vic Patel, right? Is the owner. And he donated it all. And there's no way to tell him thank you enough. But through this donation, Dothan Rotary, we sold $16,100 worth of donuts or donations. With the matching, that became $120,750 to go towards polio. That is absolutely. As a district, my goal was to try to get all 48 clubs to participate in some way. And as of this morning, all 48 clubs have participated in some way in our district. We're 100% clubs donating. So we've raised over $44,160 in our district. With the matching, that's $331,200 towards polio. That is amazing. And I was invited to a press conference this morning in Chattanooga, but I knew I already had Cassandra set up, and I couldn't not go to that. I mean, I couldn't go. But they're announced this morning that we've raised over $1,305,000 total so far towards polio. And that's not with the match. That's how much was raised. So I'd like for Cassandra to just tell a little bit, but we really do thank you so much. Tell a little bit about your morning that day, October the 10th.
Well, that morning started at about 2:00 a.m. And so that proceeded with me getting up and going to each one of the stores to make sure that all of my bakers had gotten all of the donuts done, stepping in and trying to finish up the bake before I knew that Mr. Blake was coming around at 8. I was trying to make sure I had everything ready, trying to make sure that we had the timestamp for each time that he got to the locations. And so it was just, it was a lot of work, but it was well worth it in the end. I'm, proud of my crew, my managers, my bakers, for everybody that stepped up to help. Even at the last location that we went to, they was all coming out in droves, putting them in a truck that he had to just stand there and try to get them all loaded on.
Yes, they were awesome. That was awesome.
So, I just want to say that, we're very thankful for what we can do to help you all out. If there's anything in the future that you all need, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to help.
Photo up here, please. And I told Cassandra, I said, can you bring a Dunkin' Donut box with you? Okay, Blake, bring that up here.
You gonna take?
We gotta send this to our corporate office and let them.
What you did right with you. Oh. Hang on.
I said I'd never touch another one of these after that Monday.
Turn it over, let's see.
Yeah, turn. Well, it's
Got donuts. Full of donuts. I can't turn
Let me get a couple here. Some I meant close your eyes. Where you may have closed your eyes. This way too. Good.
Like I said many times, sometimes doing a service project is hard work, but when we got to see the pleasure of all the people we donated donuts to and the happy faces, it makes it worthwhile. So thank you, Dothan Rotarians. You came through again. Wonderful. Thank you.
Get to know that.
Oh, thank you.
Dr. Leslie.
Yeah, thank you. As a Rotarian, I've had many great opportunities, as you have, to be a part of a program that is so involved in the eradication of polio. Two programs that were very meaningful to me. I've served on a team in Brazil where we actually administered the polio vaccine, visited the school systems, It was an oral vaccine. The children, put out their tongues and you put the drops on the tongues. Great program, great response. It also happened in Russia. On one of my trips to Russia, they were very involved in what was happening in the Middle East. As you saw on the film, it's not totally gone. It's still with us. It's in Pakistan and Afghanistan, a lot of those areas where they have not taken or haven't had the opportunity to treat polio in its original form. So Brazil and Russia was very, very involved in it because they have a lot of Eastern travelers coming in and so forth. So through the Rotary Club in Russia, we were involved in also working with the program. We did not administer the drug, the vaccine, but we did do projects. They did projects for money-making projects, just like we have money-making projects. So we got involved in that. That was a great eye-opening experience for me, especially from Russia. You wouldn't expect things. I don't even go there now today, but that point was, I just didn't expect them to be that kind of democratic attitude toward this problem of polio. I also coached and lived in Harris County, Georgia, which is Warm Springs area. Had the opportunity to visit Warm Springs. The chairman of our school board was also an administrator out at Warm Springs. And so we were invited as educators to go out and visit the facilities and see what was going on in that program. This today was great, but it just touches on, it's just a thumbnail sketch of what really is involved in this massive treatment that we have going on in this country. Be thankful that you live in a country where attention is given to the ending of this dreaded disease. I've seen it in other countries where children had no administration of any kind of vaccine. It's a sad affair when you see them sitting on the street, victims of what has happened there. Be thankful you live in this country every day.
Amen.
And if you're a Rotarian.
Yes.
Amen.
Charles, I want to thank you for putting all this together. I know that's a lot of work. Good job. Yes, sir. Have a board meeting at 1 in the boardroom. Next week's program is Bill Poole, Alabama Director of Finance and Senior Advisor. If you would, let's stand and do the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do,
Is the truth, is fair to all concerned, will it do goodwill and better friendships, will it be beneficial to all concerned.